Welcome, Cory. This is really awesome to sit down and talk about solar. You and I get to talk about this a lot, but it's not every day I get to sit down with somebody who puts solar on my house and get some more information about solar. So thanks for sitting down with us today and talking.
Yeah, thank you, Shane.
How long you been an electrician?
About 15 years. I started out when I was in high school still, and I did a lot of residential for about 2.5 years or so. And then it went into commercial, and then I did industrial for 4 years or so, and kind of have just a good, well-rounded electrical experience.
Okay.
And I got into solar a couple years ago, did my first project. Man, it was just really cool. The nuts and bolts of it and seeing how it comes together. And then at the end, on a sunny day, we got an array that's sitting on top of a building producing power. And to me, I just stood on the ground and looked at it, and it's just fascinating.
So you've been an electrician for 15 years and you were doing all this cool stuff, residential, power in people's homes. You go into street lighting and you're doing all this heavy duty industrial work, which we do a fair amount of that at Wescom. So I know the personal satisfaction that can come from doing the industrial side of work. And then you do a solar project 2 years ago, and now all of a sudden, like, this is your full-time gig and you have a massive passion for solar. Where did it come from? Was it that one job that you did?
Yeah, the satisfaction at the end of every day is just something that I like to step back and look at, and it's something that's measurable, I guess, you know.
So, Cory, when you did a solar project at my house, and you've told me this before, we've talked about your passion for solar and the fact that, like, I think you've told me a lot of electrical work that you've done before, it's hidden, right?
Exactly. Getting covered up by sheetrock or buried in a wall or... Right.
You don't necessarily see it. When you did my solar project at my house, you guys showed up on, I believe it was a Monday, and that Wednesday, how big of a system? 13 point something. You got some fancy calculations. I had a solar array on my roof that you could step back from on the deck and see. Yeah. So that must be where this comes from, that you can actually step back 2 days later and see.
Yeah, and we can take a look and just look at the sun beating on a shiny array plane and know that it's producing your power.
But how do you know it's producing power?
If the sun's out, it's producing power.
Is there a way that your clients can actually go see that?
Yeah, actually, our systems come with an app, but you can go on there and see like how many kilowatt hours this thing's producing and how many is produced so far today or this year or month or...
Which is really cool. And isn't that funny that how many times have we found ourselves in conversations with clients? Now, I shouldn't put myself in this other than I'm a client of yours because you did this solar at my house. And of course, we have solar at our shop too, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk a lot about this every month when we get our bill. But if that app isn't working, people kind of get into a tailspin, don't they?
Yeah, actually, just the other day, I had a guy text me at like 7:20 in the morning and say, hey, one of my batteries quit communicating. And then like literally 3 minutes later, never mind, it's back on again. And it just cracked me off. Like these people are really, paying that close attention.
And what's fascinating to me about it, Cory, is there was one time you were, I believe, doing a solar, somebody had reached out to do a solar consult. So you went down to their home and he's told you something like, I just want that fancy app like my neighbor to figure out how much power I'm producing. Or I'd done a consult and he's like, hey, well, my neighbor, he shows me on his app all the time. He's bragging.
Oh, yeah, this guy.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, no. That was like one of the very first sales or first site visits that I went out.
I think it might have been one of the first because I remember you telling me about it and I'm thinking, that's hilarious that people are that into it.
Yeah.
Well, a month later, you do solar at my home and there I am. Every blasted time it's sunny out, I'm pulling that thing up and I'm looking at my little bar graph and I'm making sure that we're producing power.
It is really cool. It's cool to see, like, even when a cloud goes by a little bit, you can see the solar production drop off if there's a little bit of shade for a small amount of time. But yeah, especially on a bluebird day when you got colder temperatures, and it's just cool to see the production.
What else fascinated me about that was most of the apps, they'll show how much carbon you're saving, they'll show how much dollars and kilowatts you're saving. It gives you everything just in a little snapshot. Way easier to read that app than my power bill. I still haven't been able to figure that part out.
I'm sure there is a lot of confusion there, but the apps do simplify it
and
show you how much power you're using and then how much power your solar system has produced.
Am I unique in that, Cory, that I'm confused by my power bill, especially when it gets in solar? Like, I've often wondered, okay, well, obviously you work at Wescom, so we have the working relationship. So I just bring my power bill to you and you're like, okay, Shane, take a deep breath. Here we go. Are you finding other clients do that to you as well?
I think a lot of people are actually in this for a bigger reason than to save money on their power bill. Because I haven't actually had a lot of people reach out to me in this. They say, one client reached out to me and he said, hey, I just got my first power bill. I'm digging it. It's less than it used to be. And that's all they're really looking for.
So when you say there's other reasons, what are some of those reasons, like the bigger reason?
The biggest projects that we've done so far were people that are just doing their part to save the planet and lower their carbon footprint, that sort of thing.
So they want a tangible impact on where their power is coming from.
Yeah, exactly. They just want to, the way the world's going and the way they're pushing renewables, they really want to be a part of that.
For those people, do you feel like they've been happy with their decision?
Oh, yeah. When we leave their job and their solar production meter has been put in, I could take a banana and put it in their mouth sideways.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Super excited.
Was that a surprise to you? Because you told me you have had this passion for solar that got ignited by doing a project and you stepping back and seeing that that sucker's producing power. I'm not relying on anyone but the sun, which how cool is that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a surprise to you, or what other surprises have you ran into?
The first project that I did, exactly what you said. I got done with it and I was just looking at that big plane. It was actually a pretty big system. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, this guy's meter is spinning backwards right now. But I was curious, what did this system actually cost him? And how is it affecting him financially? And just then he walks up. I said, hey, why don't you tell me a little bit about why you made the decision to go solar? He got a 5-year payback. That's what his system was projected to be. And I was like, wow, 5-year payback, 25-year warranty components. This is a no-brainer. And I enjoy this so much more than regular electrical work. I want to start going solar full time. So the system paybacks has been one of the things that surprised me, because this first one that I did had a 5-year payback. But sometimes we're doing systems with 25-year warranty components. And sometimes that happens to be when they pay back at the end of their warranty period. If it's for financial reasons, it still makes sense to do it for financial reasons even, because you can buy your power at today's rates.
One of these big surprises is you were really intrigued by this guy's 5-year payback. And now you're into this and you've helped energize lots of homes with solar and even some businesses. And as you're doing it, you're finding out that's not even the driving force for a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people are in it for the environment.
Right, which makes total sense. And it is pretty cool to think that, I have my concerns about where our energy is coming from when we think long term, the way the world and our country is going and the need to transition away from 100% fossil fuels into more renewables. I've pondered this question of electrical costs and what's going to happen for the future of tomorrow's energy. And in a small way, I thought, well, at least I got some solar on my house. I'm doing my part.
My biggest thing for myself was I need to get solar put in at my house before I'm not even allowed to do it by the grid. And Minnesota has some really good net metering laws that aren't even available, like right across the bridge in Wisconsin. They don't have the same net metering laws there as we have in Minnesota.
What do you mean before you're able to tie into the grid? What are you talking about?
What I see coming is grid congestion, and by that I mean solar is at its peak between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And where are most people during those hours?
Hopefully they're at work.
Yeah, most
COVID
people,
aside, right?
So power usage consumption in the homes is a lot lower during those hours. And now we have their meters spinning backwards. So they're exporting energy. Well, the power lines have to be able to handle that energy that's being exported, right? Just a little ways south of us in Xcel Energy's territory, they have certain areas where there's so much solar that they're having to upgrade the grid just to handle additional solar. So there's some people that they're looking at anywhere between $8,000 and $16,000 grid connection fee if they want to tie their solar to the grid.
What does that compare to the local utility companies here?
Well, right now, Minnesota Power, it costs $100. So one fear for me is I need to get my solar done before I'm looking at $8,000 to $16,000. Because at that point, it becomes more of a thing where it's like people are still moving forward. It's like almost not a financial thing at that point, at all.
If they're forced to pay these tens of thousands of dollars in connection fees, they're definitely the segment of the population going down the solar road are only those ones who are out to do their part. Is that true? That's where you're feeling.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, those folks who are kind of dancing that line, like I'd like to do my part, but I can't afford to do my part. Now is the time to do solar before your interconnection fees go up.
Exactly.
But as I've pondered this idea that so much of our future energy needs are going to be taken care of by the grid, all this infrastructure improvements, it always ends up that the person sitting in their home, mom and dad paying the power bill at night, their power bill only is going to go north. It's only going to go up from here. And sure, they might have some cost savings elsewhere to help offset that. I don't think just because you did solar, you're removing yourself from that conversation in entirety. It does excite me that at least, how big is my system? 13.8 kilowatts?
13.3.
13.3 kilowatts of my power, at least I have some control of that input cost.
So we're securing the cost of our energy right now. And a lot of times when I go out and do site visits, I look at today's rates and I say, based on today's rates, here's what solar can do for you. And people can rest knowing that the power that their solar is producing for them can stay at today's rates.
Right. And what's interesting about that word is today's rates. And that brings me back to where I was going with that. My 13 kilowatt system, right? I think when we did some math, I had like a 9.1 year payback on my solar system, right? That was at today's rates. And when I think about when I went to that solar conference and on the way home, I was making the argument that this cat has like a 4-year payback. I'm just saying. And within a week, the utility company down in the Twin Cities announced what kind of a rate hike? Do you remember? It was over 20% rate hike that they had went for. And what did our local utility company just announce?
Yeah, Minnesota Power, I believe it was an 18% rate increase.
And now subsequently, I think there must have been some heat that went back and forth. So they went back and they've since decreased the amount of the rate increase that they're after. But the fact is our inclination where we're feeling is right. Energy costs are going up.
Yeah, it's real. There's no question.
So do you think that's the factor that most people are considering when you're at a site visit? What kind of factors are people considering?
I would say the biggest thing is they're wondering, how much solar do I need? And when they come to me with this question, the first thing that I ask them back is, what are you hoping to do with solar? Do you want to produce some of your consumption? Do you want to produce all of your power? Or do you want to be exporting energy? There's a few different ways you can go with solar. And the neat thing about solar is it's pretty scalable cost-wise. Obviously, your system cost per watt, we would say, goes down a little bit with the bigger systems, but it's pretty scalable. The other thing that we're looking at is, okay, now we know how much solar you want. Well, how much room do we have? Do you have room for a ground mount? Is there trees around that are casting shade? All these different factors to consider to see if the site makes sense for solar.
And then people adjust their size based on their site conditions?
Yep. It'd be based on site conditions and available space.
Are you able to give them a calculation dollar-wise that to become net neutral, it's going to cost X, but, maybe that doesn't make sense. So, you can be 70% provider of your own power, and that makes more financial sense. How do you figure that out?
That's a great question. So people's roofs, that's like the most cost-effective way to install solar many times. Sometimes it's better to go a ground mount. If there's a wide open spot to the south where there's nothing obstructing the sunshine, then we can look at the ground mount. And when we compare costs between ground mount and roof mounts, if you have steeper roofs, well, then it's just a lot more labor intensive, hanging off the ropes and whatnot,
Sure.
Where a ground mount would be more cost effective. But if you have like a 412 roof pitch, let's just say hypothetically, it's wide open to the south, a south facing roof plane. It's going to be a lot cheaper to install a system there than a system of the same size on the ground.
But what fascinates me about this, Cory, is there's so many options with solar. And I personally did this, right? So at my house, it was, ground mount, roof mount, pros and cons. And when we did it at our shop, right, I do think it's pretty impressive, by the way, that you were able to sell us on doing solar at our shop, a big ground mount system. How big is that thing?
That's a 28.8 kilowatt array.
28.8, and we're producing our own power at our shop. And we were able to do a cool grand opening of it. And it's been really awesome to see us as a business embrace what we're selling, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of folks who are out there trying to sell something that their actions aren't speaking what their words are speaking. So and what a learning opportunity we had with it. But as we went through the shop one especially, my house I felt like was a little easier. You had some sort of you were on your computer spitting numbers back. You have software that you can use to drive these discussions with folks.
So we can sit down on our software program and I can build the array and I can show you just how much space it's going to take. And especially people are more concerned with this with ground mounts, right? Roofs is free real estate. What's going to be on the roof anyway? Let's cover it with solar. But a lot of times it's like, okay, we have this much roof space. Here's how much solar we can put on it. We use satellite imagery to pull measurements. Our software program, we can pull measurements off satellite imagery and it'll show you exactly what the solar looks like on your house. And we model it. If there's trees around, we put those in the model. It'll show where the shade's going to be hit in between the.
So will the software actually calculate how much power you're going to generate based on your design?
Exactly.
And then you can use that information to back into a calculator to figure out costs.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're doing that, if somebody wants to become net neutral, they want to produce all the power for their own home, what kind of information do they have to have available for you when you walk into their home?
Well, a lot of people that have been thinking about solar, they've been in touch with their power company. And I talk to them, the power company, the same people a lot. So it's pretty cool. We have something in common right off the bat. They know how much power they use in a year. So a lot of times they'll call the power company and the information is readily available. It's like a 5-minute phone call and they can tell you how much power you've used in a whole year, in a month, and what the costs were associated with the power. So we can also factor that into the payback period.
When you're setting up a solar appointment with somebody, you're usually asking them to have that information available, or are you willing to call the power company on their behalf and get it?
Well, a lot of times I do that ahead of time. They used to freely give that information out to power companies. And now the power companies aren't giving power consumption out anymore. So I have to do that with the owners there. And it's usually, like I said, about a 5-minute phone conversation to get this information.
Okay.
So.
And so you can get the kilowatt usage, which will help those folks who just they're out to do their impact, do their own production, get off the fossil fuel train. They just want to know how many kilowatts they need to produce. And you can help use your software to design that. And subsequently, those folks who are after payback, you can also tell them how long it'll come back. Are you worried about, I've considered this a little bit, that solar, it's not a new technology. You kind of bragged to me about the warranties available on solar, which made me feel good. What are those warranties for our listeners? And what does that, are you worried about what their system is going to do after you leave?
That's a great question. There's a lot of different warranties available out there with different products and whatnot. What I've decided is, like on your house, we use the Enphase product with the micro inverters, and they have a 25-year warranty on them. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I called our supplier and asked them, how is Enphase to deal with on warranties? And he says, I'm actually not sure. I've never had to do one. And I was like, okay, good service. Every time I've called them for tech support, they're on it. Many of the other manufacturers, you have like a 30 to 40 minute phone call. You're sitting on hold before you can get someone on the phone. I'm super excited about Enphase, and that's primarily the manufacturer that we went with. Even with that, most of the solar panel manufacturers have a 30-year warranty. So now we have our inverters. I'm done thinking about warranties, done worrying about it because they're so good, right? So now we look at solar panels. And pretty much everybody has a 25 to 30-year power production warranty, where what they're saying is at the end of this 30-year lifespan, or 25, some of them, our power production is still going to be at 80% of what it was when it was brand new. So that's pretty good. For something that's sitting in the sun, it's called module degradation. So things degrade in the sun, right?
Right.
And if we're still at 80% production after 30 years, I'm impressed with that. I'm not worried about it myself. Where's the technology going to be after 30 years? We got the racking system. let's put these brand new modules that are going to be twice as efficient. What's the breakthrough in technology?
Right. So what you're telling me is your infrastructure is already there. Your warranty periods are there. So you're getting your investment payback and you're doing your part. You can feel good about the money, because I think even those folks who are not doing it for payback, but they're doing it for their impact, they want to know that they're still making a wise decision, right? So they're making this wise decision. They can know that for at least the next 20, sounds like 25, 30 years, their system is going to operate. And then if there's new technologies, put a new one on and bam, you're twice as efficient, or who knows what the situation is at that time. That's really cool. What do you think about when you are getting ready for a site visit and you're getting ready to pull into somebody's house? What are some common questions that people have about solar that you're like, man, I hear this all the time?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that people are asking when I pull up is where to put the solar and how much do I need? A good way to figure out how much solar you need to produce all the power. You call the power company and they'll tell you how many kilowatt hours you used over the last 12 months in a year. You take 1 kilowatt of solar will produce 1,300 kilowatt hours per year. You know, if it's orientated to the south, we get average weather. We're going to be hitting at about 1,300 kilowatt hours per kilowatt of solar that's installed. So you can take your total kilowatt hours per year and divide that by 1,300, and that'll tell you how many kilowatts of solar you need.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Find out how many kilowatts you're using, divide by 1,300, and that'll tell you how many, kilowatt hours, right? That'll tell you how many kilowatt system to build.
Exactly.
So take whatever the power company says, divide by 1,300, right?
Yep.
If you're an idiot like me and don't understand kilowatts and watts and kilos. All right. We got that.
Yeah, so you divide it by 1,300 and that'll tell you how many kilowatts of solar you need. Now you take that and, okay, well, how much space do I need for this many kilowatts of solar? Well, 1 kilowatt of solar takes about 100 square feet of roof space. If you have like a wide open south-facing roof plane, that's ideal, right? A lot of times roofs are cut up or they're not always facing south, or you got triangular shaped roof planes. They're a little bit tougher to use the square footage on the roof, at 100%. And then another thing we need to factor in many times is egress paths for firefighters. We have to leave 3 feet from the ridge. We can't put any solar, or 3 feet up one of the rake edges. So there's some limitations there, but to get a good idea, that's what you can do. 1 kilowatt per 100 square feet.
So if you want a 13 kilowatt system like I have, you need 1,300 square feet.
Exactly.
Okay. So you said that was one thing that they're always wondering. What was the second item?
Well, I think that was it. How much solar, and then how much space does it take?
Gotcha. Okay. And that's an interesting thing for people to figure out, right? Like dad has one opinion, ma has another one, spouse has one idea, spouse has another. And then in my home, the kids had a whole nother idea. A couple kids, I better not see solar when I come off the bus. I'm going to be made fun of at school. And a couple other kids are like, no, let's put it on this side of the driveway so everyone can see it when they drive by. Turns out you just used your fancy software and all this knowledge that you have, and we went where it made the most sense.
Exactly.
Feelings aside. Cory, when you're all done and you're looking back at a job, how do you define if it was a good job, that you feel good about what you just charged Sally for her solar?
My number one goal, I would say, when I close it out and collect my last payment, is that we have a happy client. Because you know what happens when we have happy clients, right? We get referrals. And that's the best way that we grow our business, is through referrals.
How do you know that somebody's happy? What are some of the common things you're hearing from people? Is it that they're happy that we actually showed up in today's world because that's something that doesn't happen?
Mainly the smile. You can see the smile, That's how I get it, through the interactions. And I sit down and I actually ask them, how satisfied are you with Wescom services? I get a feeling how happy they are right there.
Well, and I had you dared to take a vacation day the other week, and somebody's app stopped working, and it was the end of the world, and they were calling, and I was trying to encourage this person that just because your app doesn't show that your meter is spinning backwards, the power company does actually have some technology at the meter, and I promise you, they're not stealing your power, unless they're an unethical power company. But he actually told me, I just need Cory. I said, well, great. I'm just Shane. Nice to meet you, Bob, or whatever his name is. I don't want to use his name on air, but it was remarkable to me how important it is that we leave a satisfied client, not just to get that final check, but that way that they're able to feel good about the system. And a month down the road, when they get that first power bill, they can call Cory. You can walk them through that power bill. A year later, we can look back. One of the cool things about our ESG policy, our environmental safety governance policy that we have to have as a business, and especially when we look forward in corporate world and just what that's looked at, people want to know what you're doing on the environmental social governance side. So we keep track of some statistics, and it's pretty cool to see our kilowatt usage or our kilowatt production as a business. All of our clients it's been fun to track that. And see how much of a positive impact we're having. I'm really excited about where we're going with solar. And while I have some concerns about the cost and how that's all going to be impacted, I've also been equally surprised like you. One of our first clients drove by our shop and saw our solar array. That particular day, the receptionist, I don't remember what was going on, but I happened to be sitting at the front desk. And I think you were in the lunchroom on lunch, and I came in and I said, Cory, you got to come out and meet this fella. And we did solar for him. I mean, how many referrals has he given you? One after another?
Yeah, that's the best thing. When we have someone bragging about us, that's how I know we have a happy client.
Well, and to me, then we got our own shop solar all the way completed, and we're having a grand opening. And there he is in the parking lot with our other customers. Like, that's how excited he is about his project, that he's still keeping track of where Wescom is. That was really awesome.
Yeah, and it's been really, really cool to have the array right out in front of the shop, especially for these folks that have an ideal site for ground mounts, that I can invite them to our shop and say, hey, this is exactly what we're going to install. This system, it's a great system. It has a really good warranty on it, and it's just a robust system. You can see the concrete bases. Really, that part has been invaluable to have clients be able to come and walk it. There's been a lot of good feedback from that.
Yeah, I know I've sat up front several times when people have just stopped in to even talk about solar because they see it. You know, another thing that was really interesting to me about our ground mount system is, of course, my solar is on top of the roof, and I kind of live on a fairly big hill. And my wife texted me and she says, the snow, ... solar, what's your plan? And I thought, that's hilarious. I went out and I looked outside and I saw our ground mount system and it had no snow on it. But our roof was covered with snow and it was covering our panels. What do you tell folks to do about their solar panels in the winter on the roof?
So we have a snow broom, and they make them designed specifically for solar panels. That's the brand. It's Snow Broom, BRUM. And they have them with like a telescoping lightweight aluminum handle, and you can just reach up there.
Why would you think I need a handle? I can easily, I'm just kidding. A 5-foot guy trying to reach his solar panels, I'm telling you, it doesn't go well.
You can use this snow broom and just pull the snow right off. Did you remove the snow?
I didn't actually, Cory. It started getting a little bit warmer, and I was sledding with the kids at night, and at the bottom of the hill, I looked up and it was already had blown off.
Exactly. So a lot of times that's the most effective way, is just to let it melt off, because a lot of times there's safety concerns, right? With going up on a roof. Sometimes you have to go up on the roof to remove the snow.
Well, and that's one thing that's just interesting about the climate that we live in, or where our houses are here in Minnesota. That's a factor that we have to consider, snow. You've had some folks actually hire us on a maintenance program, haven't you, to actually clear the snow off for them if they want?
Yeah, actually we did. And so what we do with that is within 48 hours of the snowfall, we'll just come out and remove the snow for them. And it's been a lot more of the elderly people that have signed up for this maintenance program. A lot of times we go through this with every client that signs up, right? We go through maintenance and what comes with it. And most of the people that we do solar for, it seems like they're able-bodied and somewhat the do-it-yourselfer type. So we'll just go through what to watch for with maintenance. But
yeah, and then they can always call, I suppose, if they're up there and do something crazy,
Exactly.
Like my wife said, well, I could have the boys go out there and take care of it. And I had this flashback of a boy. We had an elderly guy who lived up the lane from us, and his name was Mr. Brown, and we always liked Mr. Brown. He'd drop off some candy from time to time. So there was a particular big snowfall. School was canceled. We're at home. We went up, and me and my brothers decided with our shovels we were going to clean off Mr. Brown's car, right? So we thought we did this amazing good deed, and we shoveled off his car. Mr. Brown wasn't very happy when he called Dad about his car being being very much scratched up. So I told my wife, don't put those kids on the roof with shovels, whatever you do.
Okay.
We don't want to use shovels. We want to use snow brooms.
Yeah, that would be a bad ending.
A bad ending to a good project. Well, what else do you want to tell people that are looking at doing solar? Can they call anyone and get the same result?
There's a lot of people that will do a consult just online. They'll do it over the phone. They'll give you a price. And I don't feel like that's providing near the value as it does with just going out. And a lot of times when people call for solar, I just want to go meet them on their property. A lot of times there's trees or shading concerns. And I like to model that in our software program and just go over and show what solar can do for them. So I would say the main thing is work with someone that's going to actually show up on the site and take a look at your roof condition, all the shading concerns, and mainly get what you want.
That's awesome. And it's what's interesting about it is you had been to my house previously. And so I walked into your office and I was like, dude, just design me solar, right? And like another individual told me I'm a difficult person to work with because I just want it done. And you're like, no, I got to come out and we got to talk about it. And we got to make sure, Shane, that you're going to be happy with it. And I have to say from my experience, I've been super happy with it. And it's been pretty cool to get phone calls from clients that are at times friends or acquaintances, that have hired us to do solar. And to hear that, not only did Cory come and do solar for us, but he made us feel good about the solar that he did for us, right? Like you took into account. So sometimes folks start with solar and then they kind of talk about what else they can do. And that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Cory, if folks want to learn more about solar, is it that easy? They just give you a call and you schedule a consult and you come out and visit?
It's that simple. There's a few things that we'll go over the phone to make sure that it's going to be a fit for them. And if it is, I'll come out.
And you'll always have a good cup of coffee. Sometimes you'll even leave a little gift. Didn't you give somebody a little pocket knife recently?
Oh yeah. That was probably the most satisfying consult that I've done. I got out to that one and the lady wanted to save the planet and her husband didn't want much to do with the solar, but he was in by the end of it.
By the end of the pocket knife, he was all in and Mama got her solar. Well, thanks, Cory. I think that we've got a lot of information about solar for our folks, and it's been an awesome chat as always about solar.
Yeah, you bet. Anytime. Thank you, Shane.